Well, good Saturday morning, everyone. Welcome back. I am sports mental health empowerment coach, Dr. Lauren Pitts. This is the best co-host in what? The world, Ronnie Ransome Jr. And this is House Talk Pregame. How y'all doing? Saturday morning. Ronnie, we missed you last week.
I missed y'all too, and I appreciate you holding it down with those wonderful guests that we had. I really appreciate that. But I'm glad to be back this week because we have a great topic to talk about. And look, you all know there are many student and professional athletes who have struggled with mental illnesses and who are currently still struggling with mental illnesses. Mental illnesses are a complex problem that can hinder our athletes' well-being on and off the field. So improving our physical, spiritual, environmental, and relational health are equally important in having a great mental health.
Indeed, Ronnie. And that's why it is so incredibly important for parents, family members, coaches, and teammates to understand both mental health risk and benefits to ensure athletes have the greatest possible opportunity for success. And oh, by the way, get to have some fun playing sports too.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about here at Pregame. Look, we love to educate, empower, support, and positively influence the holistic performance of today's student and professional athletes, their family members, and those invested in their athletic, professional, and personal journeys.
Indeed. So look, folks, if you struggle to understand mental illness or my hope would be that you have compassion for those affected by it, then you're in the right place, because every single solitary week here on Pregame, we share powerful, though very raw. We always put that disclaimer out there. Me and Ronnie don't sugarcoat a darn thing. It's raw because life is raw. Let's keep that real. Why we do it raw, but it's raw life, sports, mental health information needed to help you to make well-informed, athletic, and more importantly, life-transforming decisions. Here's something else that we want you to keep in mind, folks. You can catch us every Saturday at this same time, 11 a.m. East Coast time on Heritage Sports Radio Network, call sign HSRN. You can also catch us on HSRN at 10 p.m. on Saturdays, and then again on Sundays at 6 p.m. Look, HSRN is all that soda rebate and a bag of darn chips, and it's all about empowering the HBCU families, head, heart, and hands to deliver the impact that we all know that it can. So don't forget to catch the lineup of phenomenal shows that we share the platform with our colleagues on HSR. And they talking about money, they talking about relationships, they talking about real estate, everything under the daggone sun. We are covering on HSRN. So y'all need to show us some love and go ahead and download that app. Go ahead, I said, download the app.
Exactly. And you also need to subscribe to when our shows start as well. And look, if you want to be a part of our virtual audience, just to chime in, listen in, or if you even want to participate, please go find our Zoom link, which is available in all our bios on all our social media platforms. Or if you are a current or former student athlete, a parent of a current or former student athlete, and you want to share some testimonies, some good news, ask for some resources, help, prayers, whatever the case may be, please email us at htpregame@gmail.com because we want to hear from everybody. So look, y'all, we have a great show lined up for you all today. A very important topic, not only for student athletes, but for people in general, because, this time of year, for some people, it's not an easy time of year. It's a rough time of the year. So look, we're going to have a very passionate and powerful conversation today centered around suicide. And so suicide is the fourth leading cause of death for college athletes. While athletes have many protective factors in place, such as community, resources, regular exercise, support systems, things like that, the pressure to succeed and time constraints can elevate the risk of developing suicidal thoughts. The stressful nature of participating in college athletics, where winning at all costs is paramount, can significantly affect student athletes and their mental well-being. So we're going to talk about, what are some of those pressures that student athletes might be facing? And, having this broad conversation about suicide and being able to, let's talk about these thoughts that some people have and try and figure out, hey, look, I'm not the only one that's feeling this way, because sometimes people who deal with these things feel like they're the only ones who are dealing with this, and they feel like I can't talk to nobody because somebody's going to judge me or they're going to look down on me. So look, we're going to have that conversation amongst many other things talking about today, as well as some shout outs, some other news in HBCU world and NFL world, and like we said, we're gonna give you our mental health tips of the week too. So, Dr. Pitts, do you want to start with your mental health tip of the week, or would you like me to start off first?
I want you to go first.
You want me to go first? All right. So my mental health tip of the week is, so I just want to list off a few things because Dr. Pitts, as you know, me and you both are, strong advocates, deeply invested advocates for all things of mental well-being, including going to see an outpatient therapist. And unfortunately, we still have, a stigma and a stereotype, not only, in our community of Black and brown people, but even just in the therapeutic world. There's stigmas, there's stereotypes that have been passed down decade after decade. And so, for those that we come across, whether it's clients or just people on the streets, we do run across people who ask about, therapy and things like that. And especially when I know when people find out that I'm a therapist, their eyes light up and they're like, well, what do we talk about? What am I coming here for? Is it really worth my time? Do I really have to pay somebody to talk to? And I tell people, look, therapy is what you want it to be. For some people, they enjoy it. For other people, it's not for them. Right. So my mental health tip of the week this week is geared towards those who feel like they don't need a therapist, but they need some type of healing, some type of growth, some type of reprocessing, things like that. So first of all, my first tip that you can do without therapy is journaling your thoughts. If you don't feel like expressing your thoughts to a therapist, psychologist, whatever the case may be, you have to express some thoughts somewhere. And we always tell people the worst thing you can ever do is just bottle up and internalize your thoughts. So write them down, whether it's actually pen and paper journal, the note section of your phone, voice memo, whatever the case may be. Get those thoughts out. Number 2, cry. Now, especially for my fellas, especially in the Black and brown communities, we know crying is sometimes a big no-no, especially amongst men. But look, I'm telling you, one of the best ways to relieve that pain, that hurt, that internalized anger and frustration is to cry. Look, y'all, we have tear ducts for a reason. Especially men. Men, we have tear ducts for a reason. It is okay to cry. Crying does not make you weak. Crying is one of the most effective ways to release to release those feelings, to release those emotions, to release that energy. Crying is a beautiful way to express yourself in a time of hurt and vulnerability. So please cry if you need to. Number 3, exercising. We all know that exercising, the physical benefits and the mental benefits of exercising are almost sometimes second to none. The dopamine, the feel good chemicals that are released in your brain when you work out and things like that are crucial and paramount for your body. And just as we all know, having a great physical health can lead to having a great mental health, because if you look good, you feel good. And if you feel good, you do good. All right. Number 4, if you don't want to talk to a therapist, because oftentimes, people don't want to talk to a therapist because they think we judge them, or they think we, shake our finger at them and say, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be saying those things. If that's how you feel about therapists, cool. I'm not going to sit here and go back and forth with you about trying to change your mind. However, I will encourage you, if you don't want to talk to a therapist, talk to somebody. Talk to a friend, sibling, relative, coworker, somebody that you feel like when you're around that person, they create a safe space for you to be vulnerable, and you can have somebody to talk to and get an unbiased opinion about whatever it is you got going on, or if you just need to vent. All right. If you don't want to talk to us, talk to somebody. Learning something new, finding a new hobby. All right. Sometimes, sometimes when people don't have anything to do, they have a lot of time on their hands, or they struggle with finding, purpose or something. I always implore you, well, in order to find purpose, you have to try. And oftentimes that comes with not being afraid to fail. And so for those who might be hesitant on trying something new, I implore you, the only thing you have to lose is you gain knowledge on that thing. That's what you lose out on by not trying. So try. Find a new hobby. Try something new. If you want to try that new diet, try it out. If you want to go try that new gym out, go sign up. If you want to try an art hobby or exercise or whatever the case is, whatever it is you want to try it. The worst thing that can happen is you lose out on the lesson. Then we have practice gratitude. one way of practicing gratitude, especially for people during this time of year where seasonal depression and things like that can really weigh heavy on somebody. I was actually in a session a few days ago, and the client, when I asked them, they could list off every single bad thing that was going on and every single reason why they felt like they should be, upset and mad at the world and, not wanting to include themselves in the festivities and stuff like that. And so I encouraged her to try this. At the end of her day, try to list 3 things she was grateful for that day. Yep. Whatever it is. For her, it was cooking a meal, watching her favorite TV show, and cuddling up with her cat. Cool. That's all right. What that does is, look, we all have bad days. We have bad weeks. We have bad months, and we can even have bad years. And for a lot of people, I actually tried this with some staff yesterday. We had a staff meeting. And, as counselors, Dr. Pitts, me and you, we hear a lot. And oftentimes what we hear is negativity and sad stories and trauma and just some of the worst things your ears could ever hear. We hear that on a daily basis. And so I implored my staff to be like, look, what were some of the highlights of your year?
Yeah.
Because we just can't always focus on the bad. So I implore you, look, not every single thing is bad. Find 3 things you're grateful for at the end of the day. Surround yourself with positivity. That goes without saying. If you feel like, you're in a negative space, you feel you're having negative thoughts and things like that, surround yourself with positive people. All right. But understand this, though. Don't surround yourself with positive people and then allow resentment or jealousy and things like that to take over as well, because that is just basically defeating the purpose. Surround yourself with positivity and allow that positivity to seep into you and feed off that energy to help boost yourself up. Last but not least, please be kind to yourself. At the end of the day, if you're struggling with something and for whatever reason you just feel like you just can't walk in a therapy office, you just don't feel comfortable doing that, at the end of the day, please still be kind to yourself, because if you're looking for other people to be kind and you can't find it for whatever reason, you still should try to be kind to yourself, because you are all you have as well. Okay. So be kind to yourself. And so those are my tips for people who may not feel like walking through a therapist's door yet, but hey, these are some things you can do on your own to help out whatever you got going on.
Thank you, Ronnie. You actually spoke to one of the things that I was going to say about gratitude. I remember hearing my grandmom and my mom and just the elders in my family, telling us regularly when we were kids growing up to be grateful for what we have, because there's always somebody in the world that's doing far worse off than we are. There's somebody somewhere that didn't wake up this morning. There's somebody somewhere that, there are people all over the world that are actually burying their loved ones today. There's somebody's child who's on life support. Somebody got a cancer diagnosis, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on of how horribly bad it could get. But I also hear my grandmother say that what doesn't kill you will make you stronger, and that God will never put more on you than you can bear. So I want to share sort of like an umbrella of tips, if you will, because I think that it's so important. Just the mere thought of suicide at this stage in my life is extremely, extremely distressing to me, because I was suicidal for many, many years. I did attempt to kill myself when I was 14, and it was like the devastation that the attempt caused to my family and my friends and my loved ones, that was overwhelming in and of itself, because the mindset was suicide is a permanent solution for temporary problems. When I received that cancer diagnosis at 14 years of age, and my parents and my grandparents were told that I only had 6 months to live, my whole world came crashing down. And I didn't feel, my thing was, well, I'm gonna die anyway. So, why go through all of this? Why have people cutting on me? Why have to go through all these treatments? Why, have to be in a situation where maybe all my hair is going to fall? And like, I didn't know, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know, I didn't have that awareness. And with everything that was going on, it's no secret. I've shared that when I was younger, my relationship with my mom was very, very strained. And I was very sickly as a child. I was sick seemingly all the time. So it's chronic pain and back and forth to doctors and the hospital and just one thing after the other. And then, not knowing my biological father and the loss of my stepfather because he had to go away. It literally seemed for years, and you mentioned years of hard times, right? It seemed like the deck was stacked against me. And I'm like, when does it end? When does it freaking end? And I tell people all the time, I don't care what nobody says, getting pregnant with Andre at 19 years of age saved my life. It saved my life because it gave my life a whole nother level of meaning. I felt then that I had something more to live for because I had such a low sense of self back then, Ronnie, that I felt like I needed somebody or something to validate me. And finding out that I was going to be bringing a child into the world just made all the difference in the world for me. And even though I stayed suicidal, I would say probably for about 7-8 more years, it was mid to late 20s when when that monkey, that demon got off my back. But this is what I realized looking back in retrospect through my clinical lens and through a more mature, healthier adult lens. Where your thoughts go, your energy flows. And you've heard me say on the show before that, depression and the whole 9 yards, it's a reason why it's called mental illness. It's illness of your mind. It's illness of your thought life. So part of how we deal with all of that, when we think about how the mind is taxed, a big part of that is stress from life happening, relationships, finance, you name it, right? So the primary tip here is reducing stress, because all of us, if you live long enough, there's going to come a point in time in your life where you may experience stress from time to time. And stress can give you a rush of energy when it's needed the most, but it can also debilitate you. And if it lasts for a long time, long periods of time, even, days, months, weeks, years, it translates into chronic stress, and it can cause you to engage in thought patterns that can become really, really harmful. And then it can trickle over into suicide ideation. So part of what I want you to do is I want you to understand how important it is to reduce your stress. You've got to take care of yourself. Self-care, that's Google. You can Google self-care. You don't have to talk to me or Ronnie or another clinician to figure out how to take proper care of yourself. You're a priority, and you're no good to anybody if you're not well. What I say all the time, that the analogy with the flight, you have to put your oxygen mask on first so that you can take proper care of you, so that you can be well to be there for the people that you love and care about most. And doing a better job of managing your stress so that you can reduce it, you got to get enough sleep. You have to sleep. You have to sleep. You need to exercise regularly. You need to build a social support network. And if you don't have that among family and friends, there are endless community resources that are available for free. There's free support groups out here. There's support groups literally all over the place, online, in the community, the whole 9 yards. Folks act like COVID's not still an issue anymore. So there are actually people that are running groups in person. They're social distancing, they are. But you can do it, you have to have a support network, because you're not alone. There is nothing new under the sun, Ronnie. There is no problem, situation, or circumstance that anybody is encountering in this lifetime that has never happened before. Yeah, it may be described a little bit different because it's 2021, but guess what? There's always been bullying. There's always been, different types of anxieties and depressions and all these things. Money issues have existed since the beginning of time. Illness, kids driving you crazy, spouses driving you crazy, domestic violence, sexual. There's nothing new. There's homelessness, helplessness, all of those things that could put people in a headspace to make them want to end their life. You get to choose. Are you going to think positive or are you going to think negative? You get to choose whether or not you want to purposefully and intentionally engage in relaxation techniques to help you to center yourself in a positive and productive way. And then if none of that works, seek help. Seek help. Seek help. There is help. There's free help. There's help that's cheap. There's help that's expensive. There's courtesy help. There's all types of help. There's all types of help. Folks, you are not alone. You do not have to fight this battle by yourself. There are people somewhere that care about you. If you feel like you don't have family members that love you and care about you, call me. Call Ronnie. It ain't like you can't reach us. We have a toll-free number. Email us. Let us know, you know what, Dr. Pitts, I don't have no money to pay you. Can I just bend your ear for a minute? I have never turned anybody away. Never, Ronnie. Never. Now, I have referred some folk to a higher level of care. Let me just go ahead with that disclaimer out there. I have referred folks to a higher level of care, but I've never turned anybody away, even if it's just to listen momentarily, to say that you need a different level of care than I'm either able or willing to provide. Help is available to you. And I want you to not decide on a permanent solution for temporary problems. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning if you just choose to wake up and keep trying.
Oh man, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Pitts, and that was a powerful testimony. And thank you for sharing your personal story with, suicide and things like that, which I'm sure we're going to get into more in a few. But thank you for that. And so, all right, y'all. So let's get into some news. Keeping on the mental health tip. So just want to say last night, this morning, was an article that came out. So for those out there listening, I'm not sure if you had tuned into the news earlier this week, but I want to say it was Monday or Tuesday. Minnesota Vikings defensive end Everson Griffin was involved in a situation where he had essentially barricaded himself in his home and was fearful for his life that somebody was trying to break into his house. Well, it had later came to find out that he was actually experiencing a mental health crisis at the time. Nobody was trying to break into his home, and that not 1,000% sure if he was on any substances or anything. I know there was a video circulating now because he had went live on Instagram, I believe. And, he was saying a whole bunch of things and, naming one of his teammates who had just left the house and whatnot, and that they had something that they used together. I'm not going to speculate, but so not 1,000% sure if he was on any substances or anything like that at the time of the incident. But eventually police were allowed in the house. They had a conversation. And so then he was transported to a mental health facility. So he then comes out and says that he admits to being, now I don't know if he was diagnosed with this by a professional at the mental health facility, or if this is something that, he went on to say that he had been battling this for a while, but he admitted that he's been dealing with bipolar disorder. And so, like I said, he didn't specify like how long he's been diagnosed with it or when he was first diagnosed, but he said he's been dealing with it for a while. He had been trying to hide it and put it off to the side and not let it get in the way of his NFL career. But this is the second mental health incident he's had in, I think, 3 or 4 years. So, he, came out and said he wants to be an advocate for it. And he also kind of hinted that, he had started experiencing some of these issues when he had lost his mother. And which, I can totally understand. Well, I can't understand that, but I can see how that could happen. I have not lost my mother, but I would imagine if I lost my mother in high school, especially high school is a pivotal time for any high schooler, and to lose a parent during that time, I can only imagine how that alters your life and how that, just is a tremendous loss. And when it's not addressed, like me and Dr. Pitts have said countless times on this show, and like we say to people, anytime you don't address a trauma, a mental health issue, a crisis, whatever the case may be, that does not mean that issue, crisis, or situation just disappears.
Right.
It will follow you no matter where you move, no matter how old you get. If you do not address that situation, it will always be there the moment you stop and turn around. And so, exactly. And so, shout out to him for, coming out and sharing that and being open and honest, because, I would imagine that was, not a highlight moment, especially, in the state he was in, and freaking out and being, almost seemed like paranoid, on the video and things like that. For him to come out and say, hey, I've been struggling with this and things like that. And while we're talking about this, I just want to throw this out there, because Dr. Pitts, I've heard it umpteen thousand times. I can only imagine how many times you've heard it as a clinician. But folks, just because somebody can be sad and then the next moment be just really hyper and wild does not mean they are bipolar.
Right.
Okay. Exactly. And then, not to be a stickler or Mr. Technical, but bipolar disorder is not just bipolar disorder. Okay. There are many different features, and there are two distinct types of bipolar that are very, very vastly different. Not vastly different, but there are distinct differences between the two, on top of other factors. So look, I can't tell you how many times when I meet a client or a family of a client and things like that, and you start asking about family history. Oh, my grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, second cousin, third cousin, they all got bipolar. Well, when were they diagnosed? Oh, I don't know. They're just crazy. Jesus. What do you mean? No. Right. So first of all, and especially in the Black communities, right, my brothers and sisters, we cannot just automatically label somebody bipolar, especially men. We got to stop doing this to females. It is not fair just because a female is defensive or not trusting you or not buying your BS that they got to be bipolar or crazy or tweaking. All right. Stop with all that. Stop with all the labeling and stuff like that. These labels are not to be messed with, because understand this. Unfortunately, we live in a society where labels matter. Just like in school, nobody wanted to be labeled the musty kid. Nobody wanted to be labeled the bad breath kid. Well, hell, nobody wants their label of bipolar or schizophrenia or depression or anything like that. Nobody wants their label used against them or vilified, okay? So if you do know somebody who is legit diagnosed with bipolar, schizophrenia, any of those disorders, do not vilify them. Nobody on this earth has any cachet, clout, deference to sit there and judge somebody else based off what they have going on. If anything, you should be empathetic and understanding that, hey, there are some people in this world who go through things that you wouldn't even fathom having to deal with on a daily basis. So I say all that to say, shout out to Everson Griffin for coming out and being open and honest about that, because we've seen over this year with NFL players. I think Calvin Ridley for the Atlanta Falcons, he took some time off from the NFL this season to focus on his mental health. He has some things going on with his family. Everybody remembers the Richard Sherman incident, when he had, was intoxicated and outside of his parent, his in-laws' house, and, was having a moment when he was not on an NFL team and knowing if his NFL career was going to continue. So look, don't judge somebody by their actions in that moment, because you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. I know it's easy to make fun and poke fun at somebody who's going through something. It's easy to do that because it's not you. The focus and the spotlight's not on you. So remember that. Just because the spotlight's not on you, God forbid that spotlight get on you and somebody makes fun of what you got going on. So just wanted to, put that out there. Dr. Pitts, did you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, you said it. You summed it up in a nutshell. And I think what you said speaks to why there is such a stigma around mental illness and mental wellness, because for so many years there's been there's so much ignorance. There's so much ignorance around mental illness and just mental health overall, that people don't even realize that when you're dealing with someone that has a fractured psyche, you have the ability to fracture them further by putting all of this added pressure upon them, by making fun of them. Finding out that one has a mental illness is not easy to deal with. And just by design of how society is as it relates to mental illness, there is a degree of embarrassment and shame and humiliation that people experience when they get a formal mental health diagnosis. That's why some people, Ronnie, won't even go through their employee assistance program, because they're afraid that if they do end up receiving a formal diagnosis, that it's going to be on their employment record and it's going to follow them, and they're going to be known as the crazy employee or the crazy colleague. And that's so unfortunate, because what it's doing is, as you said, it's deterring people from getting the help that they need, because mental illness is manageable. Mm-hmm. It's very manageable, but it's not manageable if it goes untreated. If it goes untreated, it's just like anything else. It can morph into something that becomes so much bigger. And then you get to a point where you can't hide it anymore. It's not manageable, and it gets to the place and space where it adversely impacts every area of your life. So the objective is to be proactive, not reactive. People know when you're feeling a little off. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, transparency. I don't have any, though some might argue that I should, just put that out there. I don't have a mental health diagnosis. I do not have a mental illness. And trust and believe, if I did, I would be the first person to admit it. I believe, Ronnie, that the reason why I don't have a mental illness is because in my youth, by the time I was 18, I literally felt like if I don't get help, I'm going to go crazy. That was how deeply life was weighing on me, and it was impacting a number of areas of my life. And I'm like, I don't want this to control me. I want to control it. I am a firm believer that the reason why I am sane today, even though people clown me that I'm not, I believe the reason why I am legitimately, all jokes aside, I believe the reason today why I'm legitimately sane is because I took the proactive measures and put the protective factors in place to guard and protect my psyche. Mm-hmm. You got to get the help. You can deal with it now and not have it exacerbate, or you can deal with it later and then have to endure the embarrassment, shame, and humiliation that comes with, because this global society we live in, they're going to label you.
Oh yeah. They're going to label you. And you know, like you said, to your point, like we don't live in a time where, bullying is now a new thing and things like that. I can only imagine, hell, 100 years ago, what it was like to have any type of label, because, back then in mental health, they would lock you up in an asylum or facility, and you were a guinea pig. Yeah. Let you have been schizophrenic or bipolar 100 years ago. You won't go see the light of day and just walk around society and act like, oh, ain't nothing wrong with me. There won't no chance. But, like we said, be understanding of people. I tell people this all the time, whether or not you believe in religion, the fact still remains. In Christian religion, there was one person who was perfect. All right. They got him up out of here. The Romans said, you know what? Now we good with you. You got to go. Mm-hmm. I say all to say, perfection should never be the goal. Mm-hmm. All right. And when you strive for perfection, or if you feel like you have to be perfect, you will project things. You should project insecurities and irrational thoughts onto others and judge them and make them feel bad about themselves. And that cycle continues and prospers into what we have today is bullying and all these things. So I say all to say, just be mindful of what people have going on, because you have no idea what they have going on in their personal time. Yeah. So in other news, shout out to Coach Deion Sanders for being named the SWAC's Coach of the Year. Shout out to him in Jackson State. I believe they play
today against Prairie View.
Yeah, they play
4 p.m. East Coast time on ESPNU for the SWAC championship.
Okay. Shout out to them and good luck to them and Prairie View. I'm not going to, choose sides on who's going to win that game, but shout out to both of them. And I feel, you know what? I'm going to say this. I'm going to give a Cowboys comparison here.
Go ahead. I want you to. Go ahead. I'm ready for you today. I was itching because I was going to give it to your behind with both barrels last week, but you stood me up to go take care of stuff. Go ahead, put it out there. I got something for you.
You know who
you.
the CIA's version, the CIAA's version of the Dallas Cowboys is the Bowie State Bulldogs. So I will say all that to say, shout out to Bowie State as they are playing Valdosta State today in Valdosta, Georgia, in the NCAA Division II quarterfinals.
Nice.
So they've made it to the Elite Eight.
So Bowie's doing the darn thing this year.
They are. I will say they got a tough one today. Ain't even gonna lie to you. They got.
You said they're playing in Valdosta. Well, did Jared go down for the game?
I don't think so. No, I don't believe so.
Wayne.
But they got a big one today.
Okay.
They got a big one. They win this one. Hey. And their running back, I believe, is one of the finalists for the Harlan Hill Trophy, which is D2's equivalent of the Heisman Trophy for the most outstanding player in Division II sports. So I don't have his name, but shout out to him for being a Harlan Hill finalist, because that is a huge award. And their quarterback several years ago was also a finalist for the Harlan Hill Trophy. He didn't win it, but just to be in that same conversation of being one of the nation's best programs. And people don't understand this, you know, the CIAA does not get a lot of respect in the D2 world. We are, we are the laughing stock of Division II. Oftentimes the CIAA on average has some of the lowest scholarship numbers out of all the D2 conferences. And, we're up against like Valdosta State. I can assure you Valdosta State has all the allotted amount of scholarships on their football team for their program. They are a perennial powerhouse. They are deeply invested in their football program. Not to say Bowie's not deeply invested, but just to say that, hey, this is a major accomplishment for Bowie State, because the odds are already stacked up against them. And the fact that they've made it this far and they've made it to the Elite Eight of the Division II playoffs, shout out to them. Hey, look, I'm not a Bowie State fan at all in the slightest, but I'm a fan today against Valdosta State. So shout out to them. Hope they can pull that game off. Trying to think, is there any other shout outs? Oh, I did see an article where and I found this interesting, and I hope the CIAA can learn from this. The CIAA has 3 coaching vacancies. I think Winston-Salem, I'm not even going to try and remember the other 2 schools, but I know Winston-Salem, I believe, was one of them. But I will say this, though, because the CIAA has a gross history of just recycling coaches, especially recycling coaches who they won't win in at the other place, because if they was winning, they wouldn't be available, especially in the CIAA. So they weren't winning at one school. They get sent to another school. And I would say that's probably because, once again, the CIAA, a lot of those schools, they don't have the funds and resources necessary to pull in a great talent and a great coach and things like that. But hopefully, hey, all you former NFL players and former D1 players who, want to hop on the HBCU bandwagon, we got 3 in Division II who need coaches. Okay. All right. So
you want to know what I had for you last week? Because you have sent me. So folks, what you all don't know, let me tell you about my amazing co-host. I love him like another son. I do. But he's not always kind and loving and fair to me. And if I had self-esteem issues, if I had a low sense of self, if I had low self-differentiation, then he would be extremely damaging to my overall well-being. Wow. But because I am very comfortable in my own skin, and everyone knows that win, lose, or draw, I have been a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan literally my entire life. So you cannot jerk my chain. You cannot clown me and you can't make me forsake my team. You just cannot make me do it. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes, Ronnie, because I need to get this off my chest. So here's the thing. I understand. I absolutely, positively understand that people hate the Dallas Cowboys. People hate the Dallas Cowboys because we have the name America's team. People hate the Dallas Cowboys because supposedly we have the most arrogant fans in the league. I would suffice it to say that's off, because I would rather have somebody talk trash than go to Philadelphia and get beat up. It's like, I've said before, if you ever want to rob a bank or a store or anything else in Philadelphia, just do it when the Eagles are playing at home, because all the police are at the stadium because folk don't know how to act. Now that I've got that out the way, you can go to Kansas City, you can go to Seattle, you can go to Chicago, you can go wherever you want. There are some hardcore fans out here that would just as soon fight, beat you up, slash your tires, bust your head with a bottle, whatever the case may want to be, when their team is losing. It's bananas. I am not that fan. And it irritates me because I believe in treating people the way I want to be treated. That's why I don't talk trash. I don't talk trash. I don't. There are teams out there that clearly have won way more Super Bowls than the Cowboys have. There are teams out there that have won significantly less Super Bowls than the Cowboys have. There are teams out there that have won division titles. There are teams out there that have not won division titles. There are teams out there that probably will never see a division title or a Super Bowl ever. However, I am loyal. So folk that were clowning me, the phone went back to blowing up when we lost. But again, my phone didn't buzz, ring, or nothing on Thursday. I waited, Ronnie. I was like, surely somebody's going to call and say, hey, Lauren, good win. I know I busted your chops on Sunday. I know that, that you were upset, but nobody said anything. So you know what I did, Ronnie? And I went in. I have not been one of the Dallas Cowboys fans that said that this is going to be the year that we go to the Super Bowl again. I have not said that. I've actually remained pretty silent. But what I did do, because I'm a researcher, so I was just curious. I said, the years that we did win the Super Bowl, what was our regular season record? So I need to know how to pray. I need to know how to pray. And I'm like, oh Lord, let's lose no more games, right? So when we won the Super Bowl in 1971, our regular season record was 11-3. So I'm like, okay. And now, of course, we got 17 regular season games this year. Then when we won the Super Bowl in 1977, our regular season game was 12-2. I'm like, okay, we already passed that. I was like, well, I'm telling you, this is the type of stuff I do to myself, but my Cowboys. And when we won the Super Bowl in 1992, our regular season record was 13-3. I'm like, okay, so it's getting a little better, right? So then when we won the Super Bowl in 1993, our regular season record was 12-4. When we won this Super Bowl in 1994, our regular season record was 12-4. When we won the Super Bowl in 1995, 1993, 94, and 95, you heard that, right? Our regular season record was 12-4. So my brain said, okay, so if we could run this like spades and we could run a Boston, say some prayers and went out for the rest of the regular season, that would put us at 13-4. We would get a first round bye for the playoffs. We might have a chance. We could see. I don't know if we are or not, but I'm sick of folk harassing me. I'm particularly, because you know what, Ronnie? I feel like the token Negro. I feel like that Negro that's required to speak and defend all Black people. I don't want to have to speak and defend all Cowboys fans. I don't. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Okay,
well,
I'm done.
It's funny because you actually took 5 minutes on the head. That was good.
Boom, that internal timer.
I will say this though, folks out there listening. I just asked a simple question. See, because I was not able to,
because you're ignorant.
Because I was not able to be on the show last week, Dr. Pitts asked me if I had any questions pertaining to the topic that I would want to ask. Well, I mean, it wasn't necessarily pertaining to the topic, but like when you have guests and things like that, you just like to have random questions, just make the conversation light. Mm-hmm. All I asked was, is this Dallas Cowboys fans gonna find happiness again? That's it.
Ignorant.
And then so it sounds like folks who are out there listening. See, this is how clinicians work. See, so what I hear you saying is that because you all beat up a injured New Orleans Saints team on Thursday,
we didn't beat them up. I thought, look, I ain't even gonna lie, I was holding my breath. Because let me tell you something. So sidebar, that quarterback, I have said a bazillion times, I don't wish harm on nobody, but I was like, I need them to crack him. Because I said I swear before God, if he takes off running again, I'm gonna punch him in the face.
He's a utility belt.
That one, I want to say, wasn't it like, I think it was the beginning of the third quarter. Had he broke that last tackle, he was gone because it was open field. I was like, who does that? What quarterback runs like 73 yards for a touchdown? And I'm like, do y'all see that he's not really the quarterback? He's a running back. What are y'all doing? Stop him. Put some pressure on him.
So I will say this about the Cowboys. I was talking, one of my other friends is a delusional Cowboys fan, but I would say you're not delusional, but one of my other friends is a very delusional friend when pertaining to the Cowboys. I will say this though. I will give credit where credit's due. Parsons is a problem.
Yeah. And Diggs too.
Diggs is 50-50. He's really like a coin flip.
But Micah is a beast.
Either Diggs is going to intercept the ball or somebody's getting a touchdown. It's good for them because it's entertaining. It's not good when he don't get the interception, but he is great. He is doing good this year. But Parsons is a problem.
Yeah,
Parsons is a whole problem and a half, because even though when they lost to the Chiefs, he was giving their offensive line the business.
Yeah, he's a quarterback's nightmare. Look, he'll be waking up in this like, oh, Micah.
But I think hopefully, because what's his name? Coach Quinn for the defensive coordinator. Hopefully he's learned his lesson and just let him put his hand in the dirt and just let him go get the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Don't do all that fancy dropping back, have him in the middle of the field, run side. No, let him light him up in the dirt and tell him go be Lawrence Taylor Jr. Because at this rate, it's only his rookie season, but hey, he's having a hell of a rookie season.
Don't break no legs. I don't want to see nobody suffer no break like Theismann did. Don't break no legs.
Just speaking of that, I don't know about your boy Zeke though.
He's hurt.
Pollard might be
Pollard is doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He is making a name for himself. He is capitalizing on it is what it is. I love Zeke, but you got to do what you got to do. And Pollard understands I get to shine. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. You remember the scene in Love and Basketball where they were at the party after the championship when Sidra got hurt, mm-hmm. and she was talking to Monica and she said, "Never let a freshman take your spot."
Hey,
it is like what it is.
But I mean, it's
to draw back in the game.
We got Tom Brady because of that. So I mean, hey, I
I
always tell people when it's your time to shine, don't sit there and complain that you ain't got your chance. When it's your chance, I wasn't ready. You wanted this, especially at that level. Yeah. Those opportunities come far and few between. When you get it, you better take advantage of it.
Ain't that what Dak did when Tony Romo Dak was ready. You got to stay on the ready, no matter what your position is. Stay on the ready.
Dak too good of a dude to be a Cowboy. He don't look good. He don't look good.
Sidebar before we move on, because when you said that, you know what it made me think of? In 2017, and everybody know it is what it is. But I'm not that fan, so I give credit where credit is due. In 2017, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they were playing with third string players. They were so beat up. I mean, like everybody, they went in as the underdog. There was no way they were going to beat the Patriots. Folk did not show them no love at all. I was not that, because I was like, give credit. They earned that. They earned that win. And I'm like, they went to the Super Bowl and beat the Patriots with a third string team. Like they did have some of their starters, but they were decimated. The whole team, it was just injury after injury after injury after injury after injury. And even one with the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's like when the torch is passed, be ready to run. That's all I got to say. Let's get into the subject, Ronnie.
Exactly. So look, y'all. So like we said, today's topic is about suicide and suicide in sports. And so I want to start off our topic with sharing a story that I actually had to experience. This is 4 years ago. So when I had finished playing football at Virginia State, the first 2 years after I finished playing, I was a coach at a private school. I was an offensive line coach there. And we had a kid there named Jordan. And Jordan had transferred in from another high school. Didn't, like, his coaches over there. He felt like the coaches weren't giving him a fair shot. Came over here. Me and him clicked on day one. I mean, you could just see the talent. He was undersized. He was undersized for, being on offensive line, but he had all heart. I mean, all heart. I mean, he was a dog. I mean, like when he got on the line, he was just a dog. And so, we developed a nice rapport and a good relationship. And so what I started to find out is that, he was having issues at home. His father was, dealing with substance abuse issues. Mom was, dealing with dad. Dad was taking a lot of his anger and frustrations out on the son. And so, as the season went on and stuff like that, he would start missing time from school. He would, not come to school. And then when he would come to practice, he would just be low energy, not into it. I mean, you could just tell he was just off. And so that's when we started, hearing about, what was going on at home and things like that. And, by this time I had just started in the field of counseling. I was just fresh into the field. I didn't really know a lot about suicide, and I didn't really know about, how deep depression goes and how depression affects people and things like that. So, for me, I was just, talking how I was talking, when I would see other people sad, hey, whatever you're going through, you got this, you're strong enough to get, what everybody tells you you're supposed to say when you see somebody who's sad and things like that, just encourage them and things like that. So not too long after the season, allegedly his dad had started getting help for what was going on. Their relationship seemed like it was starting to improve a little bit. And so his parents had went away to the Eastern Shore of Virginia. They had like a little vacation house out there. So they went out there and he was left at home. He wanted to stay home and whatnot. And so Black Friday, I think it was the day after Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think it was the day after Thanksgiving. His older sister had came to their parents' house, walked in, and found that he had shot himself in the head and killed himself. And when I had got the phone call, it messed me up, because that was like one of the first people that I knew on a personal level that, took their life. And, for me, like I said, I was just getting into the field, and I was just like, for me, I was just like, well, hell, I was his coach, was it, could I have said something? Could I have done something differently? Could I have, maybe I should have known some resources and tools right then and there to maybe, try and help out. And it was really sad because he was just 17. I think his 18th birthday was coming that February. And it was just really sad. And, so when we think about suicide in sports like that, oftentimes, a lot of these kids, these student athletes and professional athletes, a lot of their issues, come from home. And, for me, for example, football was my safe haven. Football was my area where I could go out and life didn't matter for the time I was on practice field. But when life gets in the way of your outlet, it's hard to get out of that space of, why am I even here? What am I doing? What is this for? And, we've seen in professional sports, we've seen where we have people like Junior Seau, who was a Hall of Fame NFL linebacker. And he ended up taking his life because of the brain injuries and the headaches and the things he was going through. We have Aaron Hernandez, who, everybody vastly knows his, trials and tribulations and some of the wrongdoings that he encountered and ultimately ended up taking his life. There have been other professional athletes who have taken their life and things like that, high school athletes, college athletes. And, it's never easy. It's never a fun thing to have to deal with. But I will say this though, and Dr. Pitts, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's safe to, one of the first things I've seen as being a clinician for the last 6 years is that one of the first things I see is that a lot of people experience suicidal thoughts here and there. I think it would be safe to say that most people, I'm not going to throw out a number, but I would say a good majority of people have experienced maybe a suicidal thought or a self-doubt thought here or there at some point in their life. I would argue that it's sometimes a natural response to adversity, to to danger, to challenges and things like that. But when you feel like you said earlier, when you feel like that's the only answer, when you feel like that's the only solution to your problem, I will even go as far as to say, out of all, we talk to people all the time about the things we can control and as humans and things like that. And there's not too many things we can control. But suicide is on that very, very short list of things that people put into their own hands and take control of their life. And oftentimes, by taking control of your life by route of suicide, you have chosen to end your life, at least in the physical world. Now, I'm not even going to start to begin here and sit here and act like I know anything about life after death or anything like that. That's not what this conversation is about. However, getting to that point where you feel like you no longer want to be in this world physically and you feel like you need to check out, that's what we want to talk about today and see if we can offer any insight, encouragement, support, resources to at least start to begin to not normalize suicidal ideations or thoughts, but to normalize speaking about it. Because a lot of people feel like, oh, if I have this suicidal thought, or if I tell somebody about this suicidal thought, they automatically think I just want to kill myself and end my life. And that's not necessarily the case. What do you think about that, Dr. Pitts?
I think that, and I want to, a couple of things. First and foremost, I think that it's important for our viewing and listening audience to understand this very, very powerful statistic. Suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States and a major public health concern. When a person dies by suicide, the effects are felt by family, friends, and communities. That is systemic. It has a domino effect because it leaves so many questions. And that statistic came from the National Institutes of Health. I think that it's important for our viewing and listening audience to really understand, first and foremost, Ronnie, who's at risk? Who's at risk for suicide? And, when we talk first and foremost about our student and professional athletes, people forget that they're human beings first. Mm-hmm. And they have lives and issues and all sorts of things going on that are weighing on them first and foremost as human beings, not as student athletes or professional athletes. So when we think about who is at risk for suicide, it's important for our viewing and listening audience to know that it's people of all genders, ages, and ethnicities can be at risk for suicide. It's if you have had a history of suicide attempts, whether you were younger or as an adult or whatever the case may be, if you suffer from depression or other mental disorders or substance use issues, if you are someone that is dealing with chronic pain, well, we know that's a major one when it comes to the athletic world, right? Because you all sustain injury after injury after injury after injury after injury. And what do we know about not just football, but basketball too, baseball too? Like sports wear and tear on your body. Mm-hmm. It does. So it might not necessarily be chronic pain right now while you're still actively playing, but wait till you get a little bit older. Wait till, you know what I say about Tom Brady? I say the way to beat Tom Brady is to remind him that he's 44. Just remind him that though he's balling, he's playing, everybody keeps saying he's playing the best football ever. Mm-hmm. He's still not 24. Yeah. He's not. So chronic pain, of family history, to your point about the young man whose father was dealing with substance abuse, a family history of mental disorder or substance use, family history of suicide, exposure to domestic violence and other forms of family violence, including physical or sexual abuse, presence of guns or other firearms in the home, having recently been released from prison or jail, exposure either directly or indirectly to other suicidal behaviors such as that of family members, peers, or celebrities. It is so important for people to humanize our athletes, Ronnie. We have to humanize idolize them. We love them. We celebrate them. We want our teams to win. We want to celebrate, 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 celebrate. Eric and I were watching The Last Dance for probably the third or fourth time last night on Netflix with the Bulls when they
Yeah.
and you listen to each person talk and Scottie Pippen and the mental strain that he was under being so significantly underpaid and all of the pressure that was on Michael to carry the team, and everybody was going through stuff. Everybody was going through stuff. And think about it, back then there was no discussion of mental health or wellness in professional sports. So I think that it's imperative for people to understand that our athletes are human. They're human beings with feelings and fears and doubts and worries and concerns. And just because they're on the field or the court or the baseball diamond, life's still happening at home. They still dealing with stuff at home. It's like, and we didn't mention it, but what was it, 2-3 weeks ago, Ronnie, when the player from the Raiders had the DUI that involved a fatality. Like, we awareness, that's the overarching thing that I want to for folks to be aware of, is that we have to be aware. We have to know what some warning signs are. We have to Ronnie, we got to pay attention.
I'm glad you said that word. I'm glad you said the word attention, because I want to kind of dial it down to, we were talking about, collegiate and high school student athletes and professional athletes, but let's even dial it back even further to our little league athletes, because unfortunately, I can say when I was a child, when I was, elementary school age, suicide was not the only time we heard the word suicide was when you was on a basketball court or a football field, and that's what you ran.
Yeah.
That was the only time.
Okay.
That was the only time we had heard that. Yeah. I can't tell you how many kids, elementary school age kids that I've worked with just in the last 6 years who have either developed suicidal ideation or thoughts or have a history of suicidal ideations and attempts in elementary school. And to your point, you raised a great point. And what I will say is some of the things I've noticed, especially and so I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think this conversation needs to be had on a broader scale for people to understand this. Because when you hear the word suicide and you hear somebody suicidal, even though the stigma with that, like we talked about earlier, with stigma associated with being bipolar and schizophrenia. Normally when you associate somebody with those, they automatically think, oh, they're out of their mind, they're crazy, they can't think straight, they can't, comprehend stuff. And that's the furthest from the truth. There are high functioning bipolar and schizophrenics out in this world, and you would never know unless they told you.
Right.
So even people with suicide, there are people who are high functioning and have suicidal thoughts or struggling with major depressive disorder. But I will say this with children's concern, what I've often seen times is that, because we know this as clinicians, that children in elementary school age, they feel the feelings. Mm-hmm. They can feel them. Any feeling that we feel as an adult. Exactly. And to them, it feels so intense because it's the first time they're feeling this and it's new to them. They have no record or recollection of, well, when I felt like this before, I did this. This is their first time doing it. So it's new. Not only is it a new feeling, it's also a scary feeling, because what do we know about the unknown? The unknown can scare us. Yeah. So when you're dealing with children who are expressing being suicidal, what I've noticed in just my encounters with children, and Dr. Pitts, you can tell me if you've encountered anything differently, but what I've always encountered is oftentimes children, especially elementary school age children who express suicidal ideations, very rarely do they actually want to do the act of suicide. Mm-hmm. I would go as far as to say that some children who express those things, they express it from a lack of attention. And look, kids are smart nowadays. When kids want your attention, I always tell, when kids feel like they're deprived of attention, they're going to get your attention one way or another. And if they feel like they're so deprived, they don't even care if the attention is negative attention. They just want you focused on them. kids like that often can put two and two together that, oh, well, saying the word suicide, I want to kill myself is a bad thing, but I want somebody's attention. I want somebody to look at me and focus on me. So I'm going to say these things and that's going to get attention. Oftentimes they don't understand that, well, when you say that, my mind isn't on, oh, you need attention, you need love, care, and affection. My mind is on, yo, like, you 7 years old. Why do you want to kill yourself at 7?
Wait a minute. So just real quick, Ronnie, it's because I need our audience to hear this. So I'm going to give this comparative analysis personally and professionally. Professionally, the youngest client that I had that threatened suicide was 5 years old. And it wasn't like a temper tantrum, I want to kill myself. It was attention seeking, but it was attention seeking because of the magnitude of trauma that this kid was being subjected to, and nobody was listening. So the child threatened to kill themselves because the child was intelligent enough to know, okay, nobody's listening to me. If I say I'm going to kill myself, maybe somebody will realize that I am hurting and I want to stop hurting. 5 years old, the youngest threat for attention. 2 former clients, 7 years old, who actually attempted and had to be hospitalized because of the attempt. 2, 7 years old, 7 years old. Personally, the youngest children that I am aware of that have made threats for suicide, in part for attention and in part as a scream for help, I'm hurting, please make it stop. Those 2 individuals were 9 years of age. The one individual that I know personally that killed themselves and was successful was 13. 13 years old. Ask me why.
Why?
Being bullied. And nobody protected him.
And that's so unfortunate. And to your point, you know, I will also say this about, and this is the other ugly side of dealing with children who express these thoughts, because oftentimes as adults, what do we know about adults? Adults who struggle with emotional regulation and emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, when they hear a kid, to your point, it's not
react all pissed off and threaten to beat them and slap them because they threaten to kill themselves. Hello, they're screaming. Okay, I'm gonna calm down.
And you know, but no, you made a great point, because you know what's crazy? What is one of the most common things that parents in that situation will say? They'll get mad at the kid for reacting to the environment they're in the same way the adult does. And the
you
kid
scared
is like,
me half to death. Why would you say something like that? Are you crazy? What were you thinking? Do you want to go to hell? No, I want to stop hurting. And as my parent, you're supposed to be the one to help me do that. How about that, mom and dad? And
if a kid had the vocabulary to even say something like that, the parent will probably still want to beat on them. And so I always tell adults this, like, kids are not stupid in the slightest. Kids are extremely intelligent. It takes an intelligent kid to put together, like, yo, this environment is hell. Like, this is what I gotta look forward to. Oh, nah, can I check out? And I will also say this while we're on the topic of kids. And I think 2 things contribute to us seeing this early age of kids expressing suicidal thoughts and ideations. Number 1, in some way, shape, or form, video games. Because in more specific video games such as like Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Minecraft. Well, I've never played Minecraft, so I'm not gonna say Minecraft, but don't freak out, parents. But I will say this: video games that involve shooting and things like that. What do we always know about video games? Your character can die during a video game. You just come right back. When the video game, if your character gets in a bad position, like in Fortnite, if you don't build your little fort, but you got a whole bunch of people trying to take you out, you got all this pressure on you, you'd be like, oh, well, my character can just die and I come back. That same pressure you feel in the real world, in the physical world, there is no reset button. There is no console that you can hit a reset button on, like, you know what, let me start on a different area of the map and maybe this will work out for me. That's what I feel like factor number one is. Factor number two is social media. And I honestly think social media is probably social media is, and I will say this, I've personally said this to a lot of people. These kids nowadays, people talk about these kids nowadays having, being sensitive and not having tough skin and stuff like that. The hell with that. I can assure you, I probably wouldn't have wanted to be a teenager at this point in the game with the way social media is, because now these kids, it was one thing when you were growing up that, you got to fighting at school or somebody's picking on you in your school. It was only your school that heard about it. Like, you were just getting laughed on and picked on at your school. You could transfer to a whole different school and probably put on a whole new persona, and nobody would never know about your old life at the other school.
Right.
Nowadays, if you're the butt of the jokes in somebody's classroom, not only you the butt of the joke in that classroom, hell, somebody over in Europe is laughing at you now. Somebody's on their phone late at night scrolling, and they see you getting joked on in the classroom by your peers, and now they're laughing at you too. And I say this to parents, like, you have to. It is an absolute must. You must build your kids up in a way to where if they're going to expose themselves to, so, because I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when kids are, broach the idea of social media and things like that, because we live in a world where, not unfortunately, it's just the way the world is transitioning. Social media and technology will be integrated into these kids' life one way or another. That's just the way this society is going. So you can't sit there and have the old mindset of, oh, well, my kid ain't gonna get on social media till high school, and you have no type of training or preparation for them. You just say, well, you made it to high school, here you go. Social media is a wild, dangerous place. It can be a great place, don't get me wrong. It can be a very great place. It can be a great place for you to network, build your business, build your brand, make friends, all that. Social media has a lot of great benefits. But for children, it has a lot, I would say maybe more negatives than positives. And so by allowing your kid to be exposed to social media at an early age, whether they're a student athlete or not, you run the risk of, if they're dealing with bullying in school, now they're dealing with cyberbullying. If they're dealing with self-confidence or self-image issues and things like that, now that is being exacerbated on social media, because they are constantly looking at everything they wish they could be. And what do we know about children? Because, well, like we said, the act of suicide is one of the very, very, very short-lived things that we as humans actually can take control over. Yeah. When you have a young mind who is not conditioned or understand how the world works and doesn't have that emotional maturity to deal with adversity, letdowns and things like that, automatically they'll sit there and be like, well, hell, if this is what I gotta look to in the world, what am I supposed to do? I don't live like this. I don't have this. I don't have a nice car in high school. I don't have friends. So I challenge parents, please, if your kid is struggling with this, if your kid comes to you and say, hey, I'm sad, I'm upset, don't dismiss your kid. Be like, what you got to be sad for? You ain't got no right to be sad. You don't even know what sad is. You ain't paying no bills.
What you sad for?
It's crazy how, like, I've sat in sessions where I've heard a parent literally just like,
berate them,
just blast a kid for sitting there even having the thought of being sad in the situation they're in. And I look at the parent and be like, you not sad about this either?
Well, you know what it is, Ronnie, and to that point, I want to plug in the warning signs for our audience too. But it goes back to a lack of emotional intelligence. What I'm finding more and more every day is that so many people lack emotional intelligence. And it goes back, and I've said it time and time again, people handle other people through the lens by which they have lived their own lives. So you can't give somebody something that you don't have. And we all have a capacity, right? And whatever our capacity is for engaging with other people, it is what it is. That capacity does not grow until an effort is made to make it grow. You have to be willing to educate yourself and to empower yourself and to liberate yourself. And I'm thinking, like, next year we're going to do a show on the impact of narrative scripts on athletes, right? But those types of experiences can erode a parent or a caregiver or a coach's ability to be emotionally present the way that someone that is entertaining suicide would need them to be emotionally present. So I just want to, where are we at on time? 15 minutes. I just want to share real quick the warning signs that folks need to be looking for. And you hear like a lot of these, again, humanizing our athletes, but also recognizing that some of these warning signs that I'm about to share, I believe, Ronnie, I want you to chime in. I believe that athletic involvement could actually possibly exacerbate some of these warning signs just because of the pressure that the athletes put on themselves, and then the fans and coaches and family, everybody. I believe it's a setup in ways. So some warning signs for you to be aware of. This is an indication that somebody may be at risk for suicide. Talking about wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves. Talking about feeling empty or hopeless or having no reason to live. Talking about feeling trapped or feeling that there are no solutions, feeling unbearable emotional or physical pain. That's one. Talking about being a burden to others, withdrawing from family and friends. That's the second one that I feel very strongly, particularly when it's the end of one's career. Mm-hmm. Giving away important possessions. They start giving away trophies and rings, be alarmed. Saying goodbye to friends and family, another one. Putting affairs in order, such as making a will, taking great risks that could lead to death, such as driving extremely fast, excessive substance use abuse, things like that. Talking or thinking about death often. Other serious warning signs that someone may be at risk for attempting suicide include displaying extreme mood swings, suddenly changing from very sad to very calm or happy. And then what do we know to be true? We didn't list all of the professional athletes that have committed suicide, but there is a large number of athletes that have committed suicide that prior to their death agreed to have their brain studied for CTE. And a large percentage of them were found to have CTE. Mm-hmm. Making a plan or looking for ways to kill themselves, such as searching for lethal methods online, stockpiling pills, or buying a gun. Talking about feeling great guilt or shame. Using alcohol or drugs more often, acting anxious or agitated, changing eating or sleeping habits, and showing rage or talking about seeking revenge.
And those are all great warning signs. And I also wanted to add one, and I wanted you to piggyback off of this one because I might not be able to say it as polished as you will, but I will say this though, because, you know, for our high school athletes and little league athletes who are either listening or their parents are listening, one of the other signs that I feel like, you know, is pertaining to suicide and things like that, often in boys you see anger, irritability, frustration, and even in some women, I would say maybe more, you know, maybe middle school, high school age women exhibit more of the irritability and the anger. But in our young males, especially, you know, our young males, anger and irritability are often their classic cue signs for depression and things like that that can lead to having suicidal ideations and attempts. And so, but what do we know? That when you are a parent and you are dealing with your own BS and your own, you know, issues and trials and tribulations, to have your kid react to you in anger or in attitude or irritability, you're not sitting there thinking like, well, I wonder what's wrong with them. Why are they so angry and irritable? You're just reacting to what's going on. So I implore parents to be mindful of that. And even just adults, nobody is just angry for no reason. Nobody's just upset or pissed off for no reason.
Just plug something real quick there. Ronnie, I was that kid. I was like walking rage. I was a walking volcano waiting to erupt when I was younger. And I remember it like it was yesterday when one of my cousins started calling me Eveline. She started calling me Eveline. And neither she nor anyone ever asked me what I was so angry about. Nobody ever asked. Nobody ever asked.
And they only see the anger. They only see the frustration. They see the dismissiveness, the nonchalantness. And I will say this, you know, of course, you know, if nobody, I mean, if I feel like I've done nothing to you and I come up and ask you a question, I'm trying to talk to you, you just have an attitude or dismissive. Mm-hmm. If I react emotionally, I might react to the action or behavior that you are displaying. But parents, please be mindful. If a child, I'm not going to say this is a blanket thing, but I will say this, you can start here. This is just an encouraging tip. If your child is angry, dismissive, nonchalant, got an attitude, irritable, anything like that, maybe the root cause of their issue could be one of a couple of things. It could be coming from a place of hurt. It can be coming from a place of not being able to identify who they can trust to be vulnerable around. Mm-hmm. It can be from a position of where they don't feel they can be vulnerable around anybody in that current space.
Got to be safe. You have to feel safe to be able to do that.
Exactly. So, and once again, that takes a parent being emotionally mature enough to sit there and look at like, oh, well, my kid either doesn't feel like they can trust what's going on, they don't feel safe, or they don't feel secure, or they don't feel like they can be vulnerable. So I implore you to at least start there. I'm not going to say that's going to give you the answer, but it might be able to at least give you some insight as to what your kid is going through. Because understand this, if you don't take anything away from this conversation today, understand this. Suicide can be extremely scary. Suicide can be extremely of a daunting task to talk about. I would say having a conversation with children or somebody with suicide is no different than having the sex talk with a child. The first time you talk to your kid about driving, being on their own, all that. All those milestones and things are extremely scary, and it can be daunting to talk about. But you have to create a space for your child to normalize those conversations. Because, like I said, I would argue that a lot of adults naturally, at some moments when they have an adverse situation, I'm not gonna lie, full transparency, there have been moments in my adult life I'm just like, yo, like I'm getting jumped over here. Like, you ever feel like life just sucker punch you?
I call it steamrolling you.
Yeah, and just put it in reverse.
Steamrolling you.
Mm-hmm. And hey, like naturally, there are days when you're like, yo, like I want to check out. Like this ain't it. This is not it. And to that point, it's not that they just want to kill themselves just to kill themselves. Oftentimes, they just want to leave and absolve themselves of the pain and the hurt and the trauma that has lingered or that's pressing or that has exacerbated itself. Yeah. So, parents, if you don't take anything from this conversation, create the space to allow your child to express themselves without feeling judged or labeled automatically, because in their life, they feel like things are not going right. That is no, like I said, who are we to sit there and say that everything is just supposed to be peaches and cream in your life? That is a lie. That is an illusion.
Yeah.
So
I think I want to highlight that, because I really want people to understand what they can do if they or someone that they know is in crisis. Before I get to that detailed information, I want to refer our audience to the National Institutes of Health, NIH. And if you go to nih.gov/wellness toolkits, nih.gov/wellness toolkits, there's an emotional wellness checklist on there. And that emotional wellness checklist is a great resource for you, because what it does is it gives you a bunch of and it's a PDF, you can print it out. It gives you a bunch of strategies that will increase your ability to successfully handle life's stresses and adapt to change in difficult times. That checklist and the toolkit that are available are designed to build your resilience. Well, what is resilience? Resilience is your ability to bounce back in adverse times, in hard times, when difficult things happen, when stuff leaves you feeling like you've been steamrolled and you just don't know what to do. You are not the first person on the face of this planet to experience what it is you're experiencing. There was someone out there that has gone through it too. I tell people those islands are full. Those islands are full with people waiting to get on them in rafts, waiting in the water, cruise ships, tugboats, and everything else. But there is help available to you. But I do definitely want to encourage everybody to check out that emotional wellness checklist so that you can walk through it and get some tips as to how you can keep yourself emotionally well. The other thing, and this one's huge, if you notice warning signs of suicide, especially a change in behavior or new and concerning behavior for yourself or somebody that you love and care about, get help as soon as possible. We cannot emphasize enough that you are not alone. Family and friends are often the first to recognize the warning signs of suicide, and they can take the first step toward helping a loved one find mental health treatment. It's like teammates, coaches, trainers, the parking lot attendant at the stadium when you go to the practice field or whatever it is. Pay attention. You have to be aware. Call 911 if there's an immediate danger, or get the person to the nearest emergency room. You can also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's 1-800-273-8255. In Spanish, it's 1-888-628-9454. You can use the crisis text line at text hello, HELLO, to 741-741. Those hotlines are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Any information that you share is confidential. If you are in imminent danger, they do have a responsibility to report, so they will go to great lengths to get you additional help and support based upon where you are. Here's something powerful, Ronnie, and it ties into what you said about social media. This is just an indicator of the times that we're living in. If you see suicidal messages on social media, you're chatting with a friend, you're kicking it with somebody, wherever the case may be, knowing how to get help when somebody posts suicidal messages can help save a life. So many social media sites have a process to get help for the person posting the message. To learn more, you can go to suicide-help-someone-else/support-on-social-media. Yeah, you're gonna have to play that slow so you can write it down. But it is on NIH's website. The link for that is on NIH's website. If you see messages or live streaming content that suggests someone is actively engaging in suicidal behavior, call 911 or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. Folks, help is available. Help is available for you. You are not alone. Please know that. We cannot emphasize that enough. There is an exorbitant amount of stress and strain and pressure that comes with playing sports, pressure that the athlete puts on themselves, pressure that the athlete experiences, because so many, particularly professional athletes, they're providing for their families from, many have come from poverty and are carrying the weight of the entire family system on their shoulders. And it's endless. It's endless. But there is help, and you are not alone, and you can get through this without taking your life. You can be a loving, supportive, empathic member of someone's support system that can save a life. Ronnie, take us home.
And yeah, thank you for sharing all those resources and tips, Dr. Pitts, because, I want to leave the people with, like I said, the topic of suicide or the idea of suicide can be very scary and daunting, but we need to not only, help those who are dealing with those, but we also need to help understand that the stigma around it is we have to unvilify this stigma of suicide, because suicide is not a impairment of somebody. It's not a deficiency of somebody. It's somebody who is saying, hey, I need help. And the help that I have received or the help that has been given to me has not been enough for what's going on in my life. And they feel like they no longer have an option. I'm here to tell you that, look, please reach out to somebody. Please get the help that you need. There is help out there. It doesn't have to be the permanent solution to temporary issues that happen in life. Look, we all know people go through bad things. It happens, and we're sorry that it happens. But that does not mean that you cannot equip yourself with the tools and resources necessary to fight life's battles and have a support system. Like we said, if you need help, if you need professional help, you can come to me, Dr. Pitts, or any of our other colleagues that are on psychologysttoday.com and other networks to help find therapists or professionals in your area. But look, please get the help. Parents, please allow your children, create the space for your children to express their vulnerable thoughts to you and help them work through them. Don't vilify them or demonize them for feeling that way. Help them understand why they feel that way and what power they have other than suicide to combat those and come out on the other side. And so thank you all for listening today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation. Be back here next week as we have another powerful topic and another wonderful conversation. So signing off here today, I'm Ronnie Ransome. This is our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful host, Dr. Pitts. And we all hope you have a beautiful weekend. Watch some good football and have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.